yeah, there's a lot of going on. So what I will talk about is like some general things I always like to mention about serverless in the first place. Then a quick introduction about all the security touch points in your basic serverless application where you have to think about. Then some like general concepts about storing and retrieving secrets, what you have to think about IAM, about roles, policies, and all the advanced constructs. Then a little bit about auditing and monitoring, like because if there's some security issue popping up and you don't know about it, then like it's the worst thing that can happen. Then a little bit about web threats and about the mitigations and a quick summary in the end. So yeah, first things first, because like it's some general misconceptions going on about serverless. Like serverless is pay-per-use, which doesn't immediately imply that it's always low cost. You have to optimize for costs. The same is for availability and elasticity. You have to design for reliability. Like there comes something out of the box, but you can create your architecture that bad that it will be like way less reliability than just running a container and some VM. And like the same thing applies for all the other topics like performance efficiency or operational excellence, and especially also for security. Like not everything is secure by default just because you don't have to manage your security groups or your ports. Everything is managed by IAM, but you are reliable for it. So you have to design for security. Like the first thing I'm always advising is please don't just run with one AWS account. Please just use several AWS accounts, like one for production, one for staging. It's like the minimum setup for some serious projects. You should probably even go for like isolated accounts per developer because it's like way easier to test things out and you won't probably break your pre-production environment easily, and like you're not paying in advance if you're just running serverless resources, because like most of the stuff is pay-per-use. So having some additional resources in other accounts like won't impact your bill as it would be if you would run some ECS clusters, for example. So that's always the first thing I would advise. Then if we look at some default serverless architecture, we're having a lot we have to think about. Like in the first place, we still have to think about some cross-site scripting or denial of service attacks, or SQL injections, or privilege escalations, or even data loss or data corruption. That's why we should make heavy use of everything which comes out of the box by AWS, like especially the web application firewall, setting our IAM rules, policies and roles properly, and making use of AWS Config and AWS CloudTrail. And like what's also important to know, like AWS rapidly evolves, and like just keeping track about all the new features like is probably really difficult. And if I look just in the last month, I think AWS also announced this public endpoint support for Lambda functions. So you're not even need to have an API gateway in front of your functions to make it just publicly available, which could be like a huge security issue for your apps. So yeah, you have to keep track about a lot of stuff if you want to maintain good security in applications. So then first thing is about storing and retrieving secrets. Good advice is to always go for IAM where possible, because like it's way less error prone. Like you can't lose any secrets because in general, there aren't any secrets. Everything is just maintained by execution roles and by permission policies. So this is way less prone to human errors, because like most of the security flaws I faced in the last years were always determined by some human mistakes. Like it wasn't some design flaw in the application. It was always like committing some secret into GitHub or logging out some access token somewhere. So please always rely on IAM where possible. Then if you have to store some secrets, use some secure storage like the secrets manager, or DynamoDB also perfectly fits because it's a key value store and it's encrypted by default. What I really like about the secrets manager is you can easily automate secrets rotation by writing some Lambda function, which like removes a lot of operational burdens. That's really cool. Then what's also probably advisable is to keep your function small. Like by small, I mean it should be grouped by the needed access rights. So you can always assign the minimal privileges to your functions. As Sven said in the beginning, like this has to meet your demands for your application, because like the more functions you have, the more you have to fight with all the cold starts you will face. So you should always keep that in mind, but it's generally a good advice to keep your functions like grouped by the needed access rights. If you have some critical payment processing in some Lambda function, this should probably be separated and not running in some other code. So then for IAM, like I think it's the most complete and probably also the most complex service of AWS, because you can do so much with it, but you will also like struggle a lot with it in the beginning, as I did. Like it generally a good advice is to like minimal use of wildcards. So if you're creating a new policy for your Lambda functions, please never just do the DynamoDB with the star for all resources, because it's not a good way of assigning your rights for this function. Always make it as minimal as possible by like selecting the actions that are really required by your Lambda function. If it just needs to read some table entries, then please just assign the query item action, and always directly assign the ARN from your resource and just don't use wildcards. Then what's also really neat is you can also extend your policies by using conditions to making like a more fine-grained window for when the policy actually applies. Like in the example, you can see, for example, there's some condition for the leading keys of your DynamoDB items. So the leading keys must match the user ID from your federated web identity. So your Lambda function is bound to just query items which match for the identified user at the current time. Like you can do a lot with that actually. Then there's also something which is probably really unknown. You can also define some pass roles, which like defines which roles are allowed to be passed by a given identity, which is also really cool. Then there's also this construct of permission boundary policies, which I found quite useful in the past. You can apply some additional policies which are always restricting the effective permissions of a role. So for example, if you're accidentally assigning like a way too broad policy to some Lambda function, but your boundary policy have some general rules that it could, for example, just access S3 buckets with some generic prefix, for example, then the boundary policy will always restrict these permissions, regardless of what the execution policy says. That's some really cool concept to easily separate domains if they're in the same AWS account. Then like one more thing about OAuth 2 and OpenID Connect. If you have some identity provider, it really, really easily integrates with your serverless application, because you can just assign a JWT authorizer to your API gateway, and you can, for example, if you're using the HTTP gateway, it's even more awesome because there's the default JWT authorizer, which you can just use by configuring your well-known /OpenID configuration endpoint from an identity provider, and the API gateway with the Lambda function will like take care of validating the token and also extracting all the claims which are inside your token. For example, the account ID or all the other identity-specific information the token is carrying to your Lambda function. So your Lambda function is automatically bound to this user context, and you can also like forward it to all other functions. And you don't have to maintain any code or even write your own code in the first place. Then for auditing and monitoring, yes, I said in the beginning, like if you are not aware that there are some security issues happening in your account, then it's basically the worst thing that can happen. So make heavy use of what's already in the box for AWS. Like make use of the web application firewall and API gateway, because there's a lot in the box. Actually, there's throttling or rate limiting. You can do geo restrictions. You have some protection for cross-site scripting and denial of services. You can also use usage plans. So you can configure some limits based on client IDs or client API keys, which is really cool. CloudTrail is also a good idea because you can monitor all the changes to your infrastructure. And if there's some suspicious updates, you can like do direct mitigations via some attached Lambda functions, or just send notifications via Slack so you're aware of what's going on. What's also really neat is to use CloudTrail data events, for example, to track changes for your DynamoDB items. Like you can send out Slack notifications if some unexpected role or identity modifies entries in your DynamoDB table. Like that's really, really cool. Then also make use of AWS Config, because we can like easily set up auditing rules or configurations rules for your serverless functions. So if there's some changes which you wouldn't expect, like for example, the logging is disabled for your Lambda function, which sound really suspicious, you can get notified about this immediately. Also, you can also attach some direct mitigations via Lambda functions. Then what I would love to know in the beginning, it really pays off to use some more advanced tools like Dashboard. The well-architected lens is really, really awesome because it gives you a lot of guidelines on the do's and don'ts for serverless, also regarding security. So it's really worth to use, especially in the beginning where you're a lot of trial and errors and you don't really know what you're doing, because like serverless is a completely new topic. It really pays off. And you can also like try it out for the first 1 million invocations, so you don't even pay for anything. Then yeah, for the threats and mitigations, like I said in the beginning, like your responsibilities with serverless drop a lot because you don't have to care about any hardware, OS, or container vulnerabilities, but your application threat model is still the same. It's still a web application, and you will face cross-site scripting and SQL injections, and you are responsible for it. So yeah, please think about this for cross-site scripting. Yeah, escape your dynamic content properly, or use content security policies. Sanitize everything correctly for the SQL injections. Like as always, never trust the user's input, and always use compiled SQL statements. And then yeah, for the summary, like make the most out of AIM, because it's an awesome service and you can really, really restrict access very fine-grained. Probably keep your functions small and group them by the needed access rights. Make use of the advanced constructs like conditions and pass role or permission boundaries. always think about redundant layers of security. So probably don't just rely on the API gateway for authorizing your request, probably also doing in the functions that are coming downstream. Then keep your code simple, as clean and possible, like no secrets in code. Probably use static code analysis tools to find issues before committing something. Keep your dependencies as minimal as possible. That also helps in keeping a small code start small. And yeah, take advantage of AWS Toolbox and probably use third-party tools like dashboards, and always think about the common web threads, because yeah, they also apply for your serverless architecture.